Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to be learning how to make this exciting sci-fi scene. This tutorial will utilize the Rotobrush tool and the 3D camera tracker to make a really cool scene. So let's hop on over to After Effects and see what we can do. Alright, we're in After Effects here and we got this shot of Kevin shooting up nothing. See, that's the problem with this shot. There's nothing there. But to add robots, we're going to do a few little things here. So let's import in the footage just like that by dragging it on this little icon here. And what we're going to do is first 3D camera track it. We actually have a full tutorial on how to do the 3D camera tracker in depth, and you can go watch that. But I'm going to go through it again here. So we're going to track the camera. So if we right click here, we're going to track and stabilize and hit track camera. And that essentially is going to add the 3D camera tracker to it. And it's going to take some time to analyze. Once analyzed, it's going to solve. And once it's solved, now you'll have a bunch of dots lining the perimeter. And essentially what the 3D camera tracker has done is found a bunch of common pixels, found them, and then analyzed it to make a really cool looking thing here. So we know we want two robots to be around this area, right? So I'm going to select this. Now, whenever I'm hovering over any of the sections, this red bullseye comes up. See, something like this here isn't lining with the floor, so that's not going to work as well. But something like this will. So we're going to right click, and we're going to create a solid and camera. So now, if we play forward, we should see a pretty solid track of this little pink solid of the scene, and this is tracked really well, so that's a great sign. Another thing we know is that this is generally the area, and you can drag around the solid a little bit. This right here is generally the area of where I want one of the robots to be. So we have right there. That looks pretty good. So let's go add some of our robots in our new pack. I kind of like this one. He's kind of sidestepping, kind of freaking out. So that's robot 1, walk left to front. So we're going to drag that into our timeline just like this. And this is a 1080p footage, but the assets are all in 4K. So that's good. We're going to hit S on our keyboard and scale that down so we can see a little bit. And you can actually see the shadows on it all look really nice. So you barely have to do anything. But the first thing we're going to make sure we're doing, because if we play forward, it's not on the shot. So to make this actually acquire the motion of the camera that we tracked is we have to turn it into a 3D layer. So that would be over around here, but if you're not seeing it, you have to hit toggle switches and modes down here and hit this little cube button here, and that will make it 3D. And now if we play it, he's in the scene, but he's not in the correct spot. He's not really in the correct spot. He's a little bit too close to the camera. So a good way to know if the robot is in the right spot is hitting P on the solid, because we know we want this this to be here, right? And if we hit P on our keyboard, if we see we have 3 numbers here. So this is the X, Y, and the Z. We want to know the Z location. So how far away is it in Z space? So if we copy and paste, so we hit Control C, and we copy that, we go to the position, and we hit P on our keyboard of the robot, and paste that into our Z space. Now, I mean, he'll be kind of tiny, but he should be lined up pretty well where that solid is. So if we rotate this down here, not rotate, we'll throw it down there. And now mind you, he's a tiny little guy, but he is in the right spatial area of how it needs to be tracked. So that's just how you do it. We can also hide this track solid. Track solid's really only there for reference. One way to scale him up, because we know that his feet right here are on the floor, but one way to scale it up really easily and not have to readjust things is if you hit the pan behind tool, which is the anchor point tool, and you can also hit Y on your keyboard, and move this over with the X arrow, and move it down with the Y just around where his feet are. And then whenever we hit S on our keyboard and scale it up, we actually get him scaling at his feet. So now he's pretty accurate. And that looks pretty dang good. I might play some, maybe a little bit farther back. And move them over, maybe scale them up a little bit more. That looks really cool. And the great thing is, it looks pretty set in the scene already. One thing that you might note is like whenever the camera sort of rotates around here, he kind of gets a little skinny. So a way to combat that is just to rotate the robot as the camera is rotating. And then just rotate it on the Y-axis here, just to be in the right frame. So just like that. So we know he's shooting at a robot over here. So I'm actually probably needing the robot to be like there. I might want to have him moving left to right or something like that. So I'm just gonna transform. Flip horizontally, and now the robot's moving left to right, and we'll move him like that. Okay, so now we have a robot kind of moving like this. Alright, and then I did the same thing to another robot, essentially doing the same exact thing, but putting it over to the right. Alright, so now we have another problem. We have Kevin going in front of these guys, which makes sense, right? We're putting something on top of footage. The footage doesn't know that this person is in front. It's just pixels. So what we need to do is take our footage here, and if we hit Control D or Command D, if you're on a Mac, on our keyboard, and throw this above the two robots we have, then the robots disappear. But what we can do is go in here and start to Rotobrush things. Let's save out here. So Rotobrushing is a really cool tool. It's essentially a masking tool. So it masks out people really efficiently, right? So, and it's using AI as well to do so. So it can cut it out and like knows, like when pixels are moving, it knows to move the mask to fit it. So if you click this little button up here, which looks like a person with a paintbrush, you can also hit Alt W if you please, and you double click on your footage, that will open up a layer panel where you can now paint in stuff. So you should have a green little circle here that when you left click, you can paint in what you want. So as you can see, if I'm clicking and painting in the stuff, it kind of guesses what you want. And see, it also snagged on some stuff we don't want. So if we see here, and if I increase the exposure, it's a little bit easier to tell what is not correct. So if we go in here and we hit Alt, it will turn red. And if we kind of paint around what we think isn't his arms, it will take that away. And sometimes it will even take away what you want, and then you just have to paint it back. It's a process of painting in and painting out, right? Going like, I don't want that, but I want this, you know? So now we kind of have them. It looks like it's taken in a little bit of the car. We're going to take that away. And now we have a good base version of Kevin here. Also, if you want to get even more detailed, like say we wanted to get this small one, if we hit Control and left click, or Command and left click, you can drag your mouse to the side, either side, and it will make it bigger or smaller. So if you need it big or really small, you can do that. So if I want to go like, oh, I don't want this detail here, and make it really small. And it might be not enough detail to do that, but going in here and like, I don't want this, is a good idea. All right, so let's use control and click that, make it a little bigger. So now if we go in here, and I'm just gonna hit the next frame in the preview window over here, next frame. And now it's gonna do its best job, and I'm just gonna keep hitting next frame to follow Kevin. So it's just analyzing the pixels and trying to understand what is the things that we want. Now, we actually ran into a problem here. So as I was framing up the next shot, it looks like it took away a little bit of the sci-fi gun. And all you have to do is when something like that happens is just paint in what it takes away. So, and sometimes this is where Rotobrush can be a little annoying. It doesn't understand that you want this thing, and what's happening is it thinks that this part is a part of the roof for these few frames, and so you just have to go in and manually paint in what you want. But as I know that right now he's not really in front of the robots, I'm not going to worry about that little part of the gun. But as he runs over, he is a part of that, so we're just going to paint in areas and paint out areas. So now he's moving. We're going to keep going. Ooh, and see, his leg's too fast for the computer, so we're going to have to paint that in. So we're going to go in, paint it in, and maybe we want to paint out the middle in there. So just alt clicking whenever you want to paint out, and just left clicking whenever you want to paint in. Pretty easy. Just go frame by frame. So I'm going to go in here and do it for the rest of the clip. All right, cool. Now that I've adjusted things, it will actually show it as little paint brush marks for each of these, right? So that's really cool. That's in the effects panel here. And so now all we have to do to bake this in is hit this little button, which is freeze, which essentially means let's just never change what we have. And that's a really good way, because sometimes if you're working on stuff, it might refresh a frame and then that might mess up the rest of it. So freezing it, just make sure you won't have any problems later down the line. So once it's frozen, now we should see a little bit of a change. The robots, when I play forward, Kevin is in front of the robots, which looks pretty slick and really sets the robots apart and really makes it feel super real. Now, there are some problem areas. Like here, you can kind of see the sky where his like shoulders are and his ear are. So that's also something you can be doing here. You could be messing with the feather, the contrast, the shift edge, and the reduce chatter. And also use motion blur and decontaminate edge colors. So feathering is just what you think. It's feathering out your image. So if you have a very blurry shot, then blur that out. But the contrast is essentially taking that blur and smoothing and making the blur a little bit more harsh. So the less contrast you have, the actual more feathered the edges will be, the more that it will actually be blurred on the edges, right? Shift edge is essentially that. It's shifting the edge in or out of what you have. So if we shift it negative, so if we go negative with it, it kind of will cut out some of that white. And we can reduce the feather a little bit and maybe reduce the contrast or up the contrast a little bit, and that might take away some of that white. And reduce chatter really is for, we don't really need it for this shot, but it will smooth out any super warbly edges you may have. I've never had that great success with that setting. but maybe it works for one of your things. Use motion blur. For this shot, it's pretty sharp blur, like he's not moving around. Like it's the shutter speed was pretty high, so it's a pretty sharp image. So motion blur isn't really needed, but if you have a super blurry shot, then the motion blur will help. And decontaminate edge colors is one of my favorites. If you click it, what it will do is it will analyze the outside pixels and sort of blur in the edge colors, and it will give you sort of a... So if I turn this off, you can see that that white outline is there, but if we turn that on, it will take a little bit of the inside of the mask and then expand that out for you, and you can increase the radius a little bit. So as I increase the radius, it will remove some of that white. So if you're having edge issues, play with that. And you can also go down here and decrease the amount here to really like play with what you want. And there we go. That solves that issue. So another issue that I have with the shot is that these robots need to be in this puddle, don't they? They got to be reflected into the puddle. So a really cool way of doing that is we're going to go in and we're going to take our our 3D camera tracker that we already have, and we're going to click on that effect. And as we click on it, and make sure you're out of the Rotobrush tool at this point, I'm going to create another solid right where the puddle is. So I'm going to create solid. Now we have a solid that's right above where the puddle is. And I'm going to scale this up to be around where the puddle size is. And we're going to scale this up as big as we need it to be. And essentially what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to turn this off, and I'm going to mask around the puddle to get the shape of it. So I'm going to take my little pen tool here, and I'm going to mask around this puddle just like this using the pen tool. You can hit G if you would like as well. But I'm also making sure that I'm masking over the puddle solid that we created. So now if I turn back that solid, turn on that solid again, we'll have a puddle-shaped mask. And essentially, and I'll show you why we did this here in a second. And if I hit, I'm going to feather this out slightly. And now we have a mask of our puddle. So now what I want to do is I'm going to take, let's say this robot, and I'm going to hit Control D, and I'm going to take this little handle, which is the rotation handle, and I'm going to flip it 180 degrees. And if you hit Shift on your keyboard, that will lock it into intervals like 180, and we're going to throw that right below where the robot is, right? So what we need to do is make this the alpha of this solid. And in the latest After Effects, you can actually take a pick whip, and if you toggle switches and modes back to the track mat area, we'll have this area. And if we pick whip this to that solid, it will now inherit that reflection right there. And for something like this, I might have to make sure that we transform, flip it horizontally. And there we go. We have a robot moving. And make sure all of this is underneath your Rotobrush layer, because whenever he goes over that, we just want him to be sure that he is over the reflection as well. So let's do the same thing for this robot. All right, and there we go. We have the reflection, and that really makes it feel like those robots are there, right? Now that we got that, let's start adding in our muzzle flashes for this guy. And in our sci-fi pack, we have some really cool muzzle flash and so he's kind of firing from the side here. So we'll add our rifle from the side and throw that over top of everything. And again, it's in 4K, so we'll scale that down real small, and then we'll place that right where his rifle is, and we'll also have it start whenever he's pointing, so it looks like he's doing something here. So then we'll just follow the front of the gun. So if we hit P on our keyboard and hit this little stopwatch, we'll animate this as it goes. So we'll move that down and then move it over just to make it fit with the scene. And just we'll scrub through, making sure that this works. As we play, the gun is shooting right. And we can also throw this underneath the gun Rotobrush later, because then it's now behind the gun and it actually looks really cool. Another thing we can add is the muzzle flash light. If we add that to this, and I'm going to hit in a really cool way of just inheriting something's position and size. If we take this little pick whip and if you hit shift and we'll put it to the muzzle flash, it will now become that size, and we can just reposition it, and it also takes the motion as well, so it's now in the right spot. And this way we can take the transfer mode and set it to add, and we can kind of have it playing on top of it, and it will make it really bright and fun, and that just adds a lot of fun energy to the shot. And all right, so now we'll add sort of like a tracer coming from the gun and hitting this robot here, because he's shooting this robot. And we'll go to our lasers in the laser pack and see this little laser blast from the side. We'll just throw this in and we'll scale it down, and we'll have it go from... So if I position this at the beginning here, and then I put it below the gun and time it out properly, we have it sort of shooting off to the side here. And to make it hit, it's let's say it hits its knee here, we'll just mask using the pen tool. We'll just mask around where that is over here, and then it's actually masking in, so we'll hit M on our keyboard and then go over here and hit subtract, hit feather that out a little bit, and now whenever he shoots it, it hits a knee right there. And we can probably just keep using that and duplicating it, but we will now add our little sparks to his knee. So we have our sparks in this pack. This looks really good. Spark 7. What's this one look like? Spark 4 looks really good. Spark 3 looks good because it's coming from the side. Let's do that. Let's add Spark 3. Let's scale it down. So whenever it hits, it hits about right there. Plop it in where it needs to. We'll scale this down a tiny bit and put it right on its knee. Maybe that needs to be bigger. We want to go bigger with this. This is a big film, so we'll scale it up. Yeah, that looks good. And then I'll probably just take this, duplicate it, move it over to fit the next muzzle flash. So it's like pop 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 pop. And let's color this something fun. So a cool thing about this stuff, it is, you can drag and drop and have fun with it, but also we can go in here and change the color of stuff. So if we add the effect hue and saturation, hue/saturation, and drag this on the rifle side here, we could change the hue of this to fit like more of something we want. Maybe this is more of a teal blast or something like that. And then let's duplicate this and put it on our muzzle flash laser, and sort of, you know, mess with that color to make it match this here. And maybe even we want the sparks to explode in that color. So we can throw that hue and saturation effect on here. And we can take this and just sort of move the master hue around to make it work with the color that we set out to be. We have a pretty cool shot here. Then all you really have to do is just repeat the process for every muzzle flash you kind of want to do, and it's done. Alright, and that was it. I hope you learned something, and if you didn't, hit that subscribe button. Maybe you'll learn something later. Alright, have a good day, everyone. Bye.